muttered. Shit. The intercom picked this up. Wally shot him a cool rebuke from behind his Oakley shades. LB ignored him. Wally was a captain and a CRO, but that didn't have much juice up here where all their tails were equally on the line. On his knees, LB squirmed between Doc and Quincy. He stuck his head into the narrow alley between the engineer and back-end gunner for a clear view of the cockpit. LB didn't look out the windshield or the gauges and flowing emerald lines on the heads-down display. He wasn't interested in computers or satellites right now, but the pilots, the hands on the controls. He'd been in this situation before, a year ago in southern Afghanistan, Paktika province. Same drill, high altitude, sudden whiteout, PR mission. The Air Force after report said the copter pilots lost spatial orientation only minutes after being swallowed whole in clam chowder clouds. They stopped trusting their instruments, got hesitant, and decided to abort. They banked the Pavehawk out of the mission flight path. In the thin air at 10,000 feet, the rotor couldn't generate enough lift. The HH-60 sank into the unseen side of a mountain. The blade sheared into catapulting pieces in every direction. The fuselage slid backward, then somersaulted into 5 barrel rolls down the slope. Many miracles occurred in those tumbling moments. When the dented hulk of the HH-60 finally came to a rest against a stone hut, in the dust, smoke, and adrenaline, no one had a single broken bone or even a gash, just a lot of bruises and some puking. Wally was there too. He held up his breakfast burrito and emptied coffee mug. He earned himself a new call sign that morning: Juggler. Today's storm raged in northeast Afghanistan. The conditions were lousy all over this country. LB studied the men in the cockpit for situational awareness. Were the pilots keeping it together? The squall tossed them around, but Pedro 1 was built to take enemy fire. It could stand a good buffeting. In his 12 years as a pararescueman, LB had seen men and machines outperform any reasonable expectation, go far past what could be decently asked of flesh or metal. He'd been present, too, when machines failed and men broke. It was always a coin toss what was going to happen. Wally sidled next to him. He made an OK sign with fingers and thumb, asking how LB was holding up. LB made a sour face. Wally bent his helmet's mic close to his lips so the pilots could hear him clearly. "How we doing up front?" "The terrain's taking us up another 1,000. Not happy having to climb in this soup." "Stay with it, guys. We'll make it." The helicopter lurched in a stomach-churning jump over a wind burst. Pedro 1 was giving her all. Young Jamie blew out his cheeks, no fan of roller coasters. Wally turned on the 4 PJs, sticking out an upturned thumb. Doc and Quincy looked to each other. Both were experienced soldiers. Doc, a former Marine, Quincy come over from the SEALs. Neither had been in a crash. Jamie was the newest PJ. This was just his second PR mission. He waited for the others. Wally waggled the thumb, asking for a vote. As much as LB enjoyed frustrating Wally's attempts at leadership, they agreed they'd been together too long. He was the first to stick up his own thumb. This time, Wally was right on the money. The safest thing to do in these conditions was to press forward, fly the flight plan loaded into the instruments, prepped for in the briefings. As long as Pedro 1 stayed airborne and performing along this route, and Pedro 2 did the same, they should rely on the avionics. Flying white blind was not as big a risk as losing confidence and faith. The blowing ropes of fog and snow drew Doc and Quincy to one last agonized glance out the windows before they voted thumbs up. Red-cheeked Jamie made it unanimous. Wally turned forward toward the cockpit. "We got a vote back here, Major. We want to push through. There's a kid up ahead. He needs to meet us." The pilot pivoted enough to eye Wally, with LB beside him. Jamie, Doc, and Quincy came to their knees so the pilot could see the entire team. The pilot's lips parted to speak. He closed them, nodded, and returned to his instruments and